Hello and welcome to this short tutorial video on the use of the Delta program for 1D NMR processing, as well as a basic guide to the program's user interface. To begin, open a dataslate from the main dialog box by using the View drop-down menu and clicking Dataslate. Alternatively, this can also be done by holding Shift and / on the keyboard. From here, we can open a data file. This can be done in one of two ways. The first method is to use the File Explorer. First, ensure Open Data from Disk is toggled on. Then click Open Data File. This will open the File Explorer. Browse for the file you want to open, select the file and press the green tick. This will open the data file as a new geometry instance on the dataslate. This method can also be used to open a dataslate and geometry instance from the main dialog box. Click the Open File button on the main dialog box to open the File Explorer. Browse for the file you want to open and select the file. Next, click either the green tick or the Open Selected File into Dataslate button. You may also open data files directly from the computer's File Explorer if the software is enabled on the computer. To do this, find it in the File Explorer and double-click. The second method is the use of the Finger Geometry tool. This method requires a geometry instance to already be open on either the same dataslate or a different dataslate. First, ensure the Open Data by Fingering Geometry button is toggled on. Then click Open Data File. This will turn the cursor into a finger icon. To open a new geometry instance, hover the cursor over an already open geometry instance and left-click. This will open the selected geometry instance onto the dataslate. You can also drag open geometry instances onto blank dataslates by pressing the right mouse button and releasing over the blank dataslate. In addition to this, there are two more toggleable buttons: the green plus sign and the red cross. When the green plus sign is toggled, any files opened by either the File Explorer or Geometry Fingering will open as a separate geometry instance on the dataslate. Having the red cross toggled will cause any file opened to overwrite the selected geometry with the file you just opened. It will also prevent the opening of any new data files from the File Explorer if no geometries are present on the dataslate. In the top right corner is the toolbar. These tools mostly deal with the geometries themselves, rather than the data inside them. The first tool is Open Data as Layer on currently selected geometry. This tool will allow you to open a data file as a different colored set of data, or layer, on the selected geometry. This can be useful for comparative purposes. The adjacent tool, Remove Selected Layer from Selected Geometry, is the inverse. It will remove the selected layer from the geometry. If this was the only layer in the geometry will close. To close a geometry instance without removing each individual layer, first, select the geometry instance by double-clicking on the left mouse button. Then click Close Currently Selected Geometry. The Save Currently Selected Data to Disk tool will save any changes made to the data file, such as integration or peak picking. Please note though, saving does not overwrite the data file, but will create a new version which can be seen in the File Explorer as it lists the data file versions. The Print All Geometries tool will allow you to print every geometry instance in its current form with all layers to a physical copy. The Peak Pick tool will automatically pick any peak above a set threshold, which will be discussed later in the currently selected geometry. The Integrate tool will automatically integrate any significant peak in the currently selected geometry. Pick, Peak and Integrate with COSI Peak J width will perform the same functions as Pick, Peak and Integrate, but will also estimate the J values of peaks, which will be discussed later as well. The red arrows, or step slice forward, step slice back, are used with higher dimensions of NMR, and so will not be of use for 1D NMR processing. If you ever need reminding of a tool's function, hover your mouse cursor over the button, and a small help box should appear, giving a brief description of the tool. The lower set of tools, or pointers, are used to manipulate the data in the geometries. Each pointer tool has a primary function as well as some alternate uses, accessed by holding either the Shift or the Alt key. Both alternate uses can be utilized in conjunction with one another, so holding Alt and Shift will mean both alternate uses being used. In addition to this, a list of keyboard shortcut commands are available, which can be accessed by clicking and holding on the list. The commands can be used either by the keyboard key next to the command, such as Home for Reset View, or by scrolling down the list and releasing the mouse button over the command. Each pointer tool also has a different list of shortcut commands. The first pointer tool is the zoom pointer. With the zoom pointer, holding the left mouse button down and dragging will create a box, which the geometry will zoom into. Double-clicking when zoomed in will zoom out. You can also hit the Home key at any time to reset the view. Holding the Shift key will lock the zoom to either the horizontal or the vertical plane. Holding the Alt key will allow you to expand the data by moving the mouse. Moving the mouse left and right will zoom in and out, without affecting the Y-axis. Moving the mouse up and down will zoom in and out without affecting the X-axis. Diagonal movements will affect both the X and the Y-axis. The zoom mode pointer can be accessed quickly in any other mode by holding the space key. The Alt and Shift key functions of the zoom tool can also be used in conjunction with the spacebar. The pan tool is used to pan the data layer, limited to the center point of the data. The Shift key will lock the pan to the X or the Y axis until either the Shift key or the left mouse button are released. Holding Alt allows the panning of separate data layers. Pressing the R key or Home will recenter the data. Apply Amplitude Gain will increase or decrease the intensity of the data peaks by increasing or decreasing the scale of the Y-axis. Holding the Alt key will limit the change to the selected data layer. The Select tool allows you to select objects within the geometry, such as peaks, integrations, text boxes, etc. Pressing the A key allows you to select all objects within the geometry. Holding Shift lets you add or remove objects from your selection. When using drawing tools, such as Create Peaks tool or annotations, you can quickly change back to the Select tool by holding Ctrl on the keyboard. Your selection will be limited based on your previously used tool, but this can be seen by left-clicking over the cursor to open the drop menu. The symbol beside the lower cursor icon will tell you what your selection is limited to. Adjust phase rotation, twist, and the twist pivot point allows you to adjust the zero order phase by dragging the mouse across the geometry. Holding the Alt key will let you alter the first order phase instead. The program can also do this automatically for you, either by using the shortcut list, pressing the A key, or by using the Actions drop-down menu. To reset the phases, press the R key. You may also reset the phases individually by pressing either O for the zero order phase, or I for the first order phase. If you need to see either phase at a specific value, this can be done in the 1D processor, which will be seen in greater detail later. Copy position to paste buffer will record the position clicked on in parts per million and allow you to paste the information as text. Holding the Shift key will copy the information of the nearest picked peak to the position clicked. In the drop menu, there is Copy Area and Copy Amplitude. Copy Area creates a box when clicked and dragged and allows you to measure the area you cover with markers on the X and the Y axis. Holding the Shift key will limit the box to a square. Copy Amplitude performs the function of copy position but for the Y axis instead. Holding the Shift key will lock the cursor to the data, allowing for accurate intensity recording. The Adjust Threshold tool allows you to set the peak, noise, and base plane threshold by clicking and dragging the two squares or the base plane itself. The leftmost square will let you adjust the base. Clicking the base plane itself will let you adjust the peak threshold, as represented by the green and red line. The green and red line are linked to each other, so manipulating one will manipulate the other. And the rightmost box allows you to set the noise threshold. Any peak under either the noise or the peak threshold will be ignored when picking peaks. Pressing the R key will recalculate the peak, noise, and the base plane. Take care not to place the peak or noise threshold too low, as the program may refuse to automatically pick peaks due to exceeding its peak limit. If this occurs, the main dialog box will inform you. Paste reference to nearest peak allows you to reallocate the reference point to the desired marked peak. First, enter the literature reference value in the reference parameter box here. Then click on a peak. The x-axis should readjust for the new reference peak. For ease of use, the option to 0 or set the reference to the solvent literature value is given here. Zeroing is done by pressing either the Z key or pressing the 0 next to the parameter box. The test tube does the same for the solvent literature value, in this case deuterated chloroform. If the value you entered is more than one decimal place, it can be rounded to one significant figure by pressing the R key. Holding Alt sets a reference for a separate layer only. Holding Shift lets you place a reference anywhere, regardless of restrictions like threshold. Create Peak at local maximum allows you to manually pick peaks which exceed the noise and peak thresholds. The tool will mark only once for a set of peaks, unless you zoom in and mark each individual peak. Holding Alt will add specified peaks regardless of zoom. Holding Shift lets you place a peak anywhere, regardless of thresholds. The shortcut keys hold useful commands for selected peaks in this mode, such as showing J-coupling and meld peaks. Holding Control allows you to select peaks more easily. The Create Integral tool will allow you to create an integral by clicking and dragging on the left mouse button. This mode also lets you select integrals. You can split created integrals by clicking the top left square of the selection box and dragging to the point you want to split the integral in two. Two integrals can also be rejoined by selecting both and pressing the M key on the keyboard. Holding the Alt key will force create an integral, which can be useful if you want to draw an integral in a position without selecting nearby integrals instead. The Shift key will create an integral and adjust the integration range to always be within the threshold parameters. To change the value of the integration ratio, click on the Integral Parameters box, enter a new number, and press Enter on the keyboard. All other integrals will readjust themselves to scale with the changed integral value. You can also show or hide the molarities of the integrated peaks by toggling the Show or Hide Molarity button here. Also remember to delete integrals from irrelevant peaks such as the solvent peak when doing this. The Create Measure tool creates a marker between 2 points in the geometry which displays the position of both points and the sum of the 2 points in the x and the y-axis units. Holding the Alt key will force create a measure instead of selecting a measure that already exists. Holding the Shift key will lock the creation of the measure to 45-degree angles. Pressing the P key on the keyboard will display or hide the data of all measures without selecting them. Create Cursor tool will create a point which displays both position and amplitude in the units of the x and the y-axis. Holding the Alt key will force create a cursor instead of selecting a cursor which already exists. Holding the Shift key will lock the cursor to data within the thresholds. Create Annotation allows you to add annotations to the data. Click any area in the geometry and then type the message you want. The text of the annotation can be modified by holding the right mouse button. When the menu shows, you can edit the color, font, and size of the text, as well as rotate the text, align the text, or give the text an outline. In addition to this, there are two more tools in the drop menu: Create Rectangle and Create Arrow. Create Rectangle allows you to create a rectangle for highlighting areas of interest. Holding the Shift key will create a square instead. Create Arrow allows you to create arrows to highlight areas of interest. Holding the Shift key will lock the creation of arrows to 45-degree angles. Holding the Alt key for either of these is the Force Create tool. Create Molecule window lets you load any molecular structure created using Delta's molecule editor to the data. The molecular editor can be found in the Tools menu of the main dialog box. The molecular window is created by clicking and dragging on the geometry instance with the left mouse button, and selecting any .mol files which appear in the browser. Holding the Alt key forces the creation of a molecular window. Holding Shift creates a square molecular window. Holding the right mouse button allows you to customize the molecule's appearance. You can also attach known peaks to their position in the structure. First, select the peak you want to attach, select the atom you want to attach the peak to, and press the X key, or open the drop menu and scroll to Attach to X. Doing this will also unattach peaks. Deleting the windows will also unattach all peaks. The numbers above the peak represents the atom in the molecule. Create Picture-in-Picture, or PIP, will create a window of the geometry. Anything which affects the geometry also affects the PIP window, but anything which affects the window, apart from measure, cursor, pan, or zoom, also affects the geometry. Holding Shift will create a square PIP. Holding Alt will force create a PIP. Create Region performs a similar function to PIP, but creates a second geometry instance instead of a window. Anything which affects the region also affects the geometry. Pick Position and Perform Action has limited function in 1D NMR processing, as it is intended for use with data of higher dimensions. Practically, it is the same as copy position to paste buffer without copying the data to a paste buffer. The 1D processing window is a much more in-depth and detailed version of the dataslate, which can be accessed by using the Process drop-down menu and clicking Process 1D NMR. It has a few more features than the dataslate, such as compute and show statistics. This automatically sets the thresholds of the baseplane, noise, and peaks, and auto-phase the spectrum, which predicts the best phasing to use. If you know the specific phase you want for your spectrum, it can be applied by using the phasing menu here. This will add your phasing to the process list. The process list is a list of commands which will be performed from top to bottom. To add a command, use any of the tools available in the processor window. To remove a command, select the command and press Delete on the keyboard. To perform the commands, press Execute the processing list data, which will perform all actions on the list to the data before displaying the results. You can also add the modified data to a dataslate which is blank by pressing Put Process Data into Dataslate. Finally, the data can be analysed using the Analyze drop-down menu tools. In the case of one-dimensional NMR, only J-coupling analysis and quantitative analysis are the most useful. J-coupling analysis allows you to open the data file to analyse the J-coupling between peaks and copy the data either to the paste buffer or to the hard drive disk. The Royal Society of Chemistry standards in the data recovered here is lowest parts per million reading to highest parts per million reading. Quantitative analysis allows you to compare the data sample to a standard data file, but the data for each must be added before calculations can take place. As a final note, here are some cosmetic changes that you may find useful. To change the units of the x-axis, hold the right mouse button down, go to Display Units, and then select the units of your choice. You can also do this to change the y-axis units by going to Peak Units. To display molecule window atom numbers, hold Shift, Alt and A on the keyboard. To show or display the thresholds without selecting the adjust pointer, press Alt and T. To display or hide the peak values, press Alt and P. If you ever need more detailed insight into how a certain tool works, a manual can be accessed by clicking the Help button on the main dialog box. This will open a PDF with 2 hyperlinks, for one manual in English and one manual in Japanese. Finally, closing the dialog box will close all dataslate instances that are open. Thank you for watching this tutorial video, and I hope you found it informative.